Hi, I hope you're having a great day. We are not done yet. There are still a lot of questions that needed to be answered, and I am not about to ignore all those questions from all of you. So in this video, we're gonna try to answer some questions or another set of questions that some of you left on this channel. So with that out of the way, let's begin. Welcome back to NikkoVenture. Did someone transition from being a TITP trainee to a student visa holder? Thank you so much for your comments, Sumika Hussein. This question is an interesting one, and the answer to this question is equally interesting. And the answer is yes. But before anything else, you need to know that there is no direct process in which you can transition from being a trainee to being a student. Because on paper, the TITP and the student visa programs were made as two separate and distinct programs, making it virtually impossible to transition from one to the other. But the keyword there is virtually impossible. And ladies and gentlemen, that means almost impossible. That simply means that there's a way to go from here to here. It's a very complicated and indirect way, but still a way for a TITP trainee to become a student visa holder. So, if you're a TITP trainee and you really want to become a student visa holder here in Japan, you only have to do one thing, and that thing is you need to go back home. Let me say that again. If you are a TITP trainee here in Japan and you want to become a student visa holder here in Japan, you must go back home. And I'm not talking about going back to your apartment located here in this country, here in Japan. No, I'm talking about going back or returning back to your home country. If you're from Sri Lanka, go back there. If you're from Nepal, go back there. If you're from the Philippines, go back there. And it doesn't really matter how you do it. What matters is that you must leave Japan and go back to your home country. Why? There are two reasons for that. One, for a foreigner to become a ryugakusei or a student here in Japan, that foreigner needs to obtain a COE or a certificate of eligibility. In this context, a COE or a certificate of eligibility is a certificate provided or given by the Japanese government to an eligible foreigner who wants to become a student here in Japan. But generally speaking, when applying for a student visa, a certificate of eligibility, a COE, can only be obtained outside of Japan. And that's one of the reasons why a TITP trainee who wants to become a student visa holder here in Japan must go back home. 2. You must change your residence status. In other words, you must change your visa. You cannot have both the TITP visa and the student visa at the same time. No. If you are a TITP trainee who wants to become a student visa holder, you must change your visa from TITP to student. And as far as I know, the only way for a TITP trainee to do this is to go back to their home country and change their status there. And I'm not talking about going back to your home country for a very short vacation. No, I'm talking about going back to your home country with the purpose of ending your TITP contract. It doesn't matter how you do it. What matters is that you must end your TITP contract. This is very important because upon ending your TITP contract, you will lose your TITP visa. And upon losing your TITP visa, you are now capable for applying to another form of visa, another kind of visa. For example, a student visa. And that's the second reason why a TITP trainee who wants to become a student visa holder here in Japan must first go back home. However, you need to remember that transitioning from TITP to student visa is a very irregular process. It's not a very common occurrence and not so many people do it. As such, it doesn't mean that right after going back to your home country, you will be immediately eligible for a student visa. No. Even if you are no longer a TITP trainee and you've spent weeks or even months in your home country, your eligibility to become a student visa holder of Japan will still be determined by the Japanese government. That means there will always be a risk that right after or even after going back home and ending your TITP contract, you will not be eligible for a student visa. You will not become a student visa holder of Japan. There will always be that risk. The decision whether you can return here to Japan as a student or not still depends on the Japanese government. Take note of that. Now, if for some reason or another you don't want to risk going back to your home country, but you still want to become a student visa holder here in Japan, there's an option for you, my friend. But this option will never guarantee 100% success. It will never even guarantee a 50% success for that matter. I'm talking about writing a letter. But not just any letter. It should be a sort of letter that will convince the Japanese government to grant you a student visa. Now, I'm not very sure, or I'm not really sure where to address this letter. Perhaps you can consult your company for that matter. However, the success or failure of your letter will still be determined by the Japanese government. But by writing this letter, you can have a chance.
A very small chance, by the way.
To become a student visa holder here in Japan without the need of going back home. And that, Sumika Hussein, is how you can transition from being a TITP trainee to a student visa holder here in Japan. As far as I know, that is. If some of you watching this video know more about this particular topic, kindly share your knowledge in the comments down below. Thank you so much for your comment, Sumika Hussein. What if I'm an SSW caregiver who failed the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken? Can I transition to the student visa program and continue working in the same company I am right now? What if, ego boss? What if you don't do that? Thank you so much for your comment, ego boss. Surprisingly, the answer to this question is yes. But it will never be easy. You see, transitioning from SSW program to the student visa program is a very irregular process. It's not a very common occurrence and not so many people do it. I think a lot of people will never do it. Nevertheless, it is possible. However, unlike TITP trainees, SSW caregivers who want to become a student visa holder here in Japan may not be required to go back to their home country. But the transition process may be a lot more complicated. And I mean a lot more complicated. Because you are transitioning from being an employee to being a student. A very, very uncommon process among foreign workers and a downgrade, to say the least. It may take, or it will definitely take, a lot of time, and a lot more documents may be required. And one of those documents is a letter addressed to the Japanese government. This letter should be able to convince the Japanese government to allow you to transition from being an employee to being a student. Needless to say, this letter is crucial. This letter might be the determining factor whether your student visa application will be approved or denied. I cannot say any more about this particular topic other than the fact that it is possible. It will be very difficult, very time-consuming, but still possible. I do suggest though, ego boss, to consult your company, your current company, about this. Make an arrangement with them so that if you successfully downgrade yourself from an employee to a student, you will still be able to work in the same company you have right now. Again, thank you so much for your comment, ego boss. But before we proceed, I just want to share my 2 cents about these 2 questions. Dudes, why? Why would you do that? Why would you downgrade yourself from being a trainee or employee to be a student? Why? I mean, just why? Ladies and gentlemen, you really need to know that if you downgrade yourself from here to here, all benefits that you're enjoying right now will no longer be available. Because obviously students are never entitled, will never be entitled to company benefits. Obviously, your salary will also be a lot lower. And I mean a lot lower.
Very, very low.
I know that because I was a student visa holder one time and I will never go back to that time. Never. Finally, it may be, no, it will be difficult for you to live the life you have right now here in Japan once you downgrade to a student. If you're enjoying this, if you're enjoying that as an employee or even a trainee, say goodbye to them because you will never, or it may be difficult for you to enjoy them once again whenever you become a student. So my question is, why? After a good while pondering about this, I may have found the reason why some of these people are thinking or pondering about downgrading to the student visa program. And that reason may be the fact that a student visa holder can become a Kaigo Fukushishi even if he or she failed or did not take the Kaigo Fukushishi Kashiken. Perhaps these sorts of people thought that the student visa program is a surefire way to become a Kaigo Fukushishi here in Japan. And although this is true, 100% true, this will not always be the case forever. This will not last forever.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
You see, all caregiving students here in Japan, foreigners or natives, are governed by this one particular law, the Shakai Fukushishi Oyobi Kaigo Fukushishi Ho. All provisions or changes in this law will affect every single caregiving students currently living here in Japan. So, originally, this law mandated that all, and I mean all, caregiving students here in Japan are required to take the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken if they want to be Kaigo Fukushishi. In other words, originally, taking the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken was mandatory. If a caregiving student did not take or fail the exam, that student will never be a Kaigo Fukushishi. However, it was changed on April 1, 2017. The changes that made to this law or happened to this law on April 1, 2017 made it possible for every single caregiving student, foreigner or native, to become a Kaigo Fukushishi even if that particular student or caregiving student failed or did not take the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken. In other words, from April 1, 2017, taking the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken became optional. Caregiving student doesn't need to pass the exam in order to become a Kaigo Fukushishi. From April 1, 2017, the only thing that a caregiving student must do to ensure that he or she becomes a Kaigo Fukushishi is to graduate from a Japanese caregiving college. However, there is a catch. The changes made to this law are only effective from April 1, 2017 until March 31, 2027. That means that all caregiving students, foreigners or otherwise, who graduated from a Japanese caregiving college within these dates can become a Kaigo Fukushishi even if they failed or did not take the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken. In other words, from April 1, 2027 onwards, the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken will once again become mandatory. And ladies and gentlemen, we are already in the middle of 2024. And you must also remember that a student visa holder should spend approximately 2 years in a Japanese caregiving college. So before you transition, before you downgrade, make sure to do your math to ensure that you will graduate from a Japanese caregiving college before April 1, 2027. So yeah, there's that. Hi Nikko, which are the best caregiving companies and how do we apply from abroad? Thanks. Thank you as well, super Sinist. When talking about the best caregiving companies here in Japan, we must always remember that the best will always be subjective. That means the best will differ from person to person. My best might be your worst and vice versa. As such, I am not in a position to suggest which of these hundreds of caregiving companies here in Japan is the best among the rest. But what I do suggest is that when you're looking for the best or looking for a caregiving company here in Japan, look for the company that can provide the things that you want as an employee. For example, if you want a bigger monthly salary, look for a company that provides such a salary. If you want to receive a bonus twice or thrice a year, look for a company that provides such a benefit. As for how you can apply for a caregiving job from overseas, consult with your home country's Japanese embassy or any legal recruitment agency located in your home country. This is very important because each country will have a different set of procedures and will require a different set of requirements from their applicants. Thank you so much for your comment, Super Sinist. Next, is the caregiving industry much better or way better than the food service industry? Thank you for your comment. Happy May Pepito. Again, the answer to this is subjective. For me, since I am a nurse, the best industries for me is either caregiving or nursing. But my best might be the worst for some, and vice versa. If you really want to know which of these programs is the best for you, first, you must know what is your skill set. If you're the kind of person who likes taking care of the elderly, if you're the kind of person who is not bothered by shit every day, if you're the kind of person who is confident that you can pass the Kaigo Fukushishikok Kashiken, the caregiving industry might just be for you. If you're not that kind of person, find an industry that best suits your skills. It doesn't necessarily have to be the food service industry or the food manufacturing industry. Again, it will depend on your skills. It will depend on what you know and what you are capable of. Thank you so much for your comment. Happy May Pepito. Moving on. Is caregiving in Japan difficult? Yes. Can a newbie easily adapt to the Japanese working system? It depends. What is the most difficult thing about caregiving? A lot. Thank you so much for your comment, Abisandef. So, is caregiving in Japan difficult? Yes, Abisan, it is difficult. There's no argument there. How difficult? Check these videos here. I left the links to these videos in the description box down below. So, can a newbie adapt to the Japanese working system? Fast? It depends on the newbie, Abisan. Each person, each newbie will never be the same. I had a very hard time adjusting to the way the Japanese people work. But just because it was difficult for me, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be difficult for you. No. Moreover, a Japanese company will also have to do some sort of adjustments when hiring a foreign worker. It's their way of making it a lot easier for their foreign employee to adjust in the Japanese style of work. What is the most difficult thing about caregiving? The answer to this question may differ from person to person. For me, the most difficult thing for me is the culture. It's not the language. It will never be the language because you can learn a language. I love learning languages. A culture, on the other hand, may take a lot of time getting used to. And let's just be honest, the Japanese work culture is not for everyone. The Japanese work culture is one of the many reasons why many foreigners don't like working here in this country. And that might include me. So yeah, thank you so much for your comment, Abisan Desu. Those were some of the questions you left on this channel. I really do hope you've learned something new from this video. If you did learn something new, please don't forget to leave a like, comment, and share this video with your interested friends. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Again, thank you so much for your time watching this very long video. See you in the next one. Babush!